The largest armed conflict in history. World War II remains the most extensive and deadly conflict humanity has ever witnessed. This global war involved millions of soldiers and reshaped the course of history. Let's trace the key events of this monumental war on a map. The aftermath of World War I. Following the conclusion of World War I, Germany and its allies were defeated and held solely responsible for the conflict. As a result, they faced severe penalties. The Austro-Hungarian and Ottoman empires were dismantled, while Germany was burdened with significant reparations, leading to economic instability. It also lost its colonies and ceded several territories, including some to the newly re-established Poland. These sanctions fueled resentment among the German people, who perceived them as a national humiliation. Economic collapse and unrest. Germany's economy crumbled under the weight of excessive debt and hyperinflation. The national mint attempted to counteract this by printing more money, but this only devalued the currency further. Between 1914 and 1923, the value of the German mark skyrocketed uncontrollably. Although radical measures in 1924 stabilized the economy, the 1929 Wall Street crash triggered a worldwide economic crisis. Germany, already vulnerable, experienced skyrocketing unemployment and social unrest, the rise of Nazism and fascism. The economic and political turmoil paved the way for nationalist ideologies. In 1933, Adolf Hitler and the Nazi Party rose to power, dismantling the democratic system and establishing a totalitarian regime. Despite the Treaty of Versailles restrictions, Germany rearmed itself and pursued an aggressive foreign policy aimed at uniting all German-speaking people. Meanwhile, Italy, though victorious in World War I, was dissatisfied with its territorial gains. Since 1922, Benito Mussolini's fascist regime had ruled the country, expanding its ambitions by invading Ethiopia and later preparing an attack on Albania. Prelude to war. In Spain, a brutal civil war erupted between the Republican government, backed by the Soviet Union and international brigades, and nationalist forces led by Francisco Franco, supported by Germany and Italy. This war became a testing ground for new military strategies and solidified diplomatic ties between Germany and Italy. Meanwhile, in Asia, Japan expanded its imperial ambitions, exploiting China's internal conflict to seize new territories. Japanese forces committed widespread atrocities, employing chemical and biological warfare against civilians. German expansion begins. Germany initiated its territorial ambitions by annexing Austria with local Nazi support. Shortly after, it occupied western Czechoslovakia, transforming Slovakia into a puppet state and strengthening ties with Hungary. After taking part of Lithuania, Germany secured a non-aggression pact with the Soviet Union, secretly agreeing to divide Eastern Europe. The invasion of Poland in September 1939 triggered Britain and France to declare war, marking the official start of World War II. Germany's rapid conquests. While Germany focused on Poland, the Allies remained largely inactive on the Western Front. Instead, they attempted to block Germany's access to iron ore supplies through Norway. In response, Germany swiftly invaded Denmark and Norway. Using blitzkrieg tactics, rapid, concentrated military assaults, Germany overran Luxembourg, the Netherlands, and Belgium. British forces retreated as German troops pushed toward Paris. France soon fell, signing an armistice that left northern and western regions under German occupation, while the remainder was governed by the Vichy regime. Widening the conflict, Germany's pact with the Soviet Union allowed it to seize the Baltic states and parts of Romania. Meanwhile, Germany, Italy, and Japan solidified their alliance as the Axis powers. Despite relentless air raids on Britain, Germany failed to secure an invasion. Hitler then turned his attention to the Soviet Union, but was delayed when Italy's invasion of Greece faltered, requiring German intervention. Hungary, Romania, and Bulgaria joined the Axis, allowing German forces to invade Yugoslavia and Greece. The resistance movements. Throughout occupied Europe, resistance movements took various forms. Civilians organized strikes, sabotage operations, and underground publications. Others provided intelligence to the Allies. In Eastern Europe, guerrilla fighters disrupted Axis operations. Even within Germany, anti-Nazi groups attempted, unsuccessfully, to assassinate Hitler. Operation Barbarossa, the Eastern Front. On June 22, 1941, the Axis launched the largest military operation in history, an invasion of the Soviet Union. The Soviet Union, now part of the Allies, fought back fiercely. The German advance reached the outskirts of Leningrad, initiating a brutal 872-day siege that claimed over 1 million civilian lives. Meanwhile, German forces stalled near Moscow, suffering in the harsh winter. Behind enemy lines, Nazi forces carried out mass executions targeting Jewish, Slavic, and other persecutors persecuted groups. The Pacific War begins. Japan, having occupied French Indochina, faced economic sanctions from the United States. In retaliation, Japan launched a surprise attack on Pearl Harbor, crippling the US Pacific Fleet. This act drew the United States into the war. While initially focusing on the Pacific theater, the US also supplied resources to the Soviet Union, aiding its resistance against Germany. Atrocities and war crimes beyond battlefield casualties, millions suffered in forced labor camps across Asia and Europe. In occupied territories, entire communities were massacred. Nazi Germany constructed extermination camps where millions, including Jews, political prisoners, and other marginalized groups, were systematically murdered. The turning point, anticipating an Allied invasion, Hitler fortified the Atlantic coast. However, the Allies first landed in North Africa, securing key territories and pushing Axis forces out of Libya. Meanwhile, the Soviets launched a counteroffensive, forcing the Germans to retreat. With North Africa under Allied control, the invasion of Sicily and southern Italy followed, prompting Italy's new government to surrender. Germany occupied northern Italy in response. Liberation of Europe. The Soviet Union advanced rapidly westward, overwhelming German forces. On June 6, 1944, D-Day, the Allies launched a massive invasion of Normandy, liberating Paris shortly after. Resistance movements across Europe intensified, weakening Nazi control. Amid these victories, Allied leaders laid the groundwork for the United Nations to maintain future global peace. The end of the war. On April 30th, 1945, as Soviet forces reached Berlin, Hitler committed suicide. Germany surrendered on May 8th, officially ending the war in Europe. In the Pacific, the US and USSR joined forces against Japan. The Soviets launched a military offensive in Manchuria, while the US dropped atomic bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. On August 15th, Japan surrendered, marking the war's end. Aftermath and global impact. With over 60 million casualties, mostly civilians, World War II left a devastating legacy. Entire cities lay in ruins. Germany and Austria were divided among the victors, and European colonial powers emerged weakened. The war reshaped global power structures, leaving the United States and the Soviet Union as the two dominant superpowers. Although the United Nations was established to maintain peace, tensions between these two nations soon led to the Cold War, setting the stage for decades of geopolitical rivalry.